Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to ask my team to make sure you're monitoring the waiting room because we keep getting new people in. Um, Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Rebecca Kiesling. I am the Executive Director here at NAMI Northern Virginia. I also have the honor of sitting as an elected member of the NAMI National Board of Directors. Um, I want to start tonight. I want to start tonight with um, a really something really simple, but something really important. Someone who's joining us tonight has been affected by an eating disorder. And so many more of us love someone who has. We just might not know it. Eating disorders are so often incredibly quiet. People can be excelling at work, earning straight A's, raising families, showing up to practices, and posting smiling photos, but they're still struggling physically and emotionally. Nearly 30 million Americans will experience an eating disorder in their lifetime. That's 1 in 10 people. Here in Virginia, that is hundreds of thousands of people, including many here right in Northern Virginia. And what makes this so important for NAMI is that eating disorders rarely exist alone. They frequently co-occur with anxiety, with depression, trauma, OCD, substance use, and often when families call our helpline about panic attacks or severe depression, we later learn that disordered eating is part of that picture too. We live in a region that can intensify vulnerability. Northern Virginia is so high achieving, so high performing. There's so many high expectations. And our young people feel so much pressure academically, socially. Adults feel the career pressure, social media amplifies everything. And so often when people are struggling, they're struggling alone. But that's why we're here. And that's why tonight's so important. Education reduces shame. Understanding replaces judgment. And when people know what to look for and they know how to respond, then overall our outcomes are going to be better. So tonight is about building that kind of education in that community. I am so happy to introduce our presenters for tonight. First, Madison Rose. Maddie is a 24-year-old professional and a volunteer with us here at NAMI Northern Virginia. She was also recently selected as the NAMI National Next Gen Ambassador for this coming up year. Her lived experience battling mental health issues as a young adult led her to discover her passion for advocacy. Maddie is committed to fostering a welcome, open, and honest conversation around mental health to destigmatize the reality of living with mental illness. She focused in college her senior capstone project on anxiety in young adults. And her hope is that by opening up with her own story, it will help others feel seen and heard and less alone. And after Maddie, my friend, Christie Dondero Bettwy. She is the executive director of Rock Recovery, which is in Arlington. Christie came on as Rock Recovery's first staff member in April of 2013 after serving as a volunteer with Rock. Having gone through recovery herself, Christie understands the depth of support needed to recover, and you'll see is so passionate about spreading that message. She loves sharing her journey with her community, and I know it will be powerful to you as well. Christie holds a bachelor's degree in communications with a minor in Spanish from North Carolina State University. You're not here to hear from me, so I am going to go off screen and ask Maddie to join us. Maddie?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today virtually with everybody. Rebecca already gave me a nice little introduction. My name is Maddie Rose. I'm 24 years old and I am born and raised Northern Virginia. So I've been here a long time. I just wanted to share a little bit more about myself before we hop into my story. I think the biggest thing that I would like everyone to know is that I'm just a huge animal lover. I have three pets of my own, a cat, a dog, and a horse. So I'm basically a zookeeper in addition to my full-time job and my work with NAMI. So, to hop into my story, it begins in July of 2021. Growing up as a child in elementary school, middle school, high school, even into college, I was a very high achieving individual. I earned good grades on exams. I was active in my community, enrolled in sports and extracurriculars, honor societies. I was the type of person who you would really think had their ducks in a row. Um, and I think I did all of this while kind of hiding some struggles that I was dealing with, because I was a little bit ashamed to talk about them. This all manifested for years and years, like I said, from elementary school until college, and that brings me to July of 2021. I was experiencing very heightened moods and emotions, and that led to a decreased need for sleep. One thing leads to another, and I was hospitalized for a week, a little over a week, where I learned that I had bipolar 1 disorder. Receiving this diagnosis absolutely broke me. I felt so defeated and hopeless, and I was so scared for my future because I really thought that the goals and dreams that I had set for myself, I thought that they were no longer attainable. I definitely would say at this point, I look back at this period of my life and I kind of see this as what I would call the trigger to my disordered eating habits. Shortly after my diagnosis is when I fell into a restrictive eating disorder. Now, I felt as though when I received my bipolar diagnosis that I had no control over anything anymore. I had no control over my life. And that sense of normalcy that I had, I felt like it was just ripped away from me. And for me personally, this eating disorder kind of gave me that control back. And slowly but surely, it really overtook my life. I became very, very afraid of certain foods. I had a select few that I refer to now as my safe foods, I would say. But other than that, I was very scared of food and nutrition. My body perception was also extremely warped and skewed, and this really overtook my life mentally and physically. Months passed. I went back to university after summer break. I was attending college classes, and I was doing that while battling this eating disorder. I will say attending classes was so difficult. That brain fog that I had from just being so exhausted mentally and physically was very difficult to cope with. And I really wasn't seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And then I had a light bulb moment. I was at a get together with a bunch of friends, and one of the girls that I knew, but I wasn't super close with, asked to pull me aside. So we went into a space more private, and I didn't know her very well, but I did know that she had struggled with an eating disorder, and she was a huge advocate, for eating disorder recovery and support systems in our community. And she gave me a gentle hug and she looked at me and she said, I'm worried about you. I'm here to support you and I love you. And for some reason in that moment, the glass kind of shattered for me. And I saw I had people that care about me and I have people who want to support me. And in that moment, I decided that I was going to fight for recovery. And I'm so glad that I did. I began speaking with a therapist and we began combating what I now call my eating disorder voice, this food noise that I had. Because that voice was really mean to me when I was in my eating disorder. It would tell me things that weren't true, and it was just very unkind. So, me and my therapist began to unlearn and reframe my mindset. I started thinking about things more through gratitude. thinking I'm so thankful for the things my body allows me to do. I'm thankful for nutrition, for this few food that is fueling me. And it was not an easy process. And I always say healing is not linear, and you have to give yourself grace, and you have to know that small steps, they're still steps. You're still moving forward. And again, recovery is not linear, but progress is progress. So my therapist and I worked together, and I learned how to combat this eating disorder, this food noise, my eating disorder voice. And yeah, that is a little bit about my story. Real quick, before I hop off, I wanted to share a few things about what's next for me. Since 2021, last year, I ran my first full marathon, 26 miles, which is something I never thought I would be able to do. My relationship with movement and food is healthy, and my relationship with my loved ones and my family is so strong. That friend who came to me and told me that she loved me and she cared about me, I am so thankful for her for showing me that recovery is possible. It was scary for me at first, but I'm so happy that I navigated that battle. And as I said, it's never linear, but I'm giving myself grace every single day. And mental health awareness is so important to me and dear to my heart. And I just want to say thank you for everyone for being here today, because reducing the stigma around mental health starts with each of us working together. So, from the bottom of my heart, I just really want to thank you for being here today.
If you've heard me talk about Maddie before, you know that it's glowing, and now everyone here knows why. You are a gift, and I'm thankful to your friend that that person that said that they're there for you, because you're here with us now. Um, Thank you, Maddie, for sharing your story. That's not easy, and it's so appreciated. I am going to turn it over now to Christy from Rock Recovery, and she's going to show why I love her too.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you, Maddie. It's so beautiful to hear your story, and I'm so encouraged by your honesty and just all of the growth you've done, all of your insight, and the ways that you're using your story to encourage other people. I myself am also recovered, so I'll share a bit of my story during our time together today. But I always say everyone's journey is entirely unique, which it is. You can't have someone else's story. Yours is definitely yours, and your road is yours to walk. But you've walked your road so beautifully, and it's wonderful that you share it with us. So thank you. I will do the hardest part of my night where I share my presentation. Let's see. Make sure I don't show you too many photos of my daughter by accident. And apologies for my background. I am in my basement hiding from my 3-year-old, who was very sad that I had to work tonight. I've had a lot of things this week. It is Eating Disorder Awareness Week, as Rebecca shared. And so I have been very popular this week. It's been really exciting and encouraging to get to be out in the community and share more about Rock Recovery's work, and also just this issue that affects so many of us and means so much to me personally. So glad you're here with us tonight. I know we have some questions that you can drop in the chat if you have them while I'm speaking, and I'll make sure I leave some time. I'll keep an eye on the time here to make sure that we have some good time to jump into this later as well. So tonight we're talking about supporting people with eating disorders, which means a lot of different things. So I'm sure some of you maybe are going through this journey yourself personally. If so, I see you. Many of you are here for a child or a loved one, or maybe a combination of all these factors. But no matter what brings you here tonight, I'm hoping that something that I share will be useful to you. And if you are here for yourself, I always say recovery is made up of a lot of sort of annoying, but small baby steps. Each one matters so much, even if it feels small. And if whatever the step might be, doing just the next right thing and taking that next step is such a huge part of finding health and achieving that recovery. And same thing if you're supporting a loved one, we can't fix things for people that we go through, people that we love what they go through, but we can be there. We can love them, however imperfectly. And so whatever small steps you can take after tonight to just love someone better and support someone better, hope it'll be helpful. And I'm sorry for my voice. I'm drinking my tea because I've been talking a lot this week. And my daughter, her best friend at school, the mom texted me because she's like, my daughter is very worried that you lost your voice. Can I tell her that you're okay? I'm like, yes, I'm okay. I'm just talking a lot. So 3-year-olds talk. They're sharing the gossip on the playground. All right, well, let's get started here. So this is me. You can see me here. I am the executive director for Rock Recovery. We're a nonprofit. We're based in Arlington, Virginia, but we've got a telehealth footprint across DC, Maryland, and Virginia, with the primary bulk of our work being in Virginia and in the NOVA region. We are one of the only nonprofits in the country that actually provides direct service care, especially for those with eating disorders. So we actually directly provide therapy to people in need. We take Virginia Medicaid. We have some insurance plans that we're in network with. We also do sliding scale. So cost is never a barrier for anybody who needs our help. We do individual and group therapy for both teens and adults. Right now, I believe our youngest client is 9 and our oldest, I think, is 78. I'm getting the numbers correct. So we serve a wide range of folks who are struggling with disordered eating and eating disorders and body image issues. And again, everything we do is meant to make care accessible. We also do a lot of great educational work like this, wellness workshops, different corporate talks as well. But the main thing that makes us unique is that we are a treatment provider. And that means that we go deep, but we're a little bit more narrow in some of our work. So tonight, here's what we're going to go through together. What are eating disorders? I'm sure a lot of you are experts on this already, but sometimes it's nice just to kind of level set and come back together on, some of the basics here. What are warning signs to look for if we're worried about somebody or ourselves? What's our role as a loved one? And then caring for an adolescent versus an adult, because there are some nuances to caring for, more of a peer or an adult versus a teen or a child. One of our wonderful parents that we got to serve, Ginger, will share a bit about her story with her child and then share a few resources for support. So what are eating disorders? We know that 28 million Americans alone will battle an eating disorder. And some of these stats vary a little bit. Some say 30, some say 28.8. Either way, based on my very unofficial research of talking to people on airplanes and at dinner parties, I would say it's probably twice this. I think it's probably, if I had to estimate, around 60 million. But because of stigma, because of lack of resources, because of shame and misunderstanding, only about 20 to 30% of people struggling actually get the help they need to recover. So they actually access treatment and care. That means about 70% of people aren't getting the help that they need. And so because of that, I think, again, some of these stats are slightly underrepresented and underreported because a lot of people are struggling in silence and not reaching out for help. So again, even just being here tonight is such a huge win because you are breaking that isolation, you are reaching out, and that's a really hard thing to do. And unfortunately, a lot of people do struggle alone. But the main point, I think, of sharing these statistics, this breaks into about 1 in 10 Americans. And again, I think it's probably closer to 1 in 5. But a lot of people do struggle, and this is still something people don't talk about enough. I think we've made a little bit of segue with mental health generally. I know COVID was horrible for so many reasons. One of the little silver linings that I've seen in my work is that it did help propel the mental health conversation forward. And then telehealth. That was something that we didn't even dream of before COVID personally. We didn't do anything virtually. We did everything in person in Arlington and then in DC. So this was really new for us. So that is certainly something that has been redeeming in these last 6 years. But I do know that a lot of people certainly struggle and aren't seeking help, but we're still getting a little closer to talking about it and having less shame. So if you're ever with me on an airplane or at a dinner party and ask what I do for a living, buckle up because I'll tell you. Because I love talking about this because I really deeply believe there's no need for shame or stigma with any mental health challenge, no matter what it is. Bipolar, anxiety, depression, PTSD, eating disorders, whatever it is, right? Like we are all human, and this is part of the cost of being human, and this is part of our roads to navigate and our journey to be on together. And so additionally, and again, some of these stats I think vary, but 1 in 5 Americans experience other mental health challenges, so anxiety, depression. Again, I think it's probably like 4 in 5, but I'm not the researcher out there. I have to listen to the statistics that are given to me. But a lot of people are struggling and not always seeking help. There are 3 main eating disorders you're probably familiar with, and really 5 here that I'll briefly describe tonight. Anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and then otherwise specified feeding and eating disorder, which is called OSFED. And then RFID is, of course, the one before that. We love our acronyms. So anorexia is the one that most people think of when you think about media. You have kind of the thing that often you can kind of portray. But anorexia is actually one of the least common eating disorders. Binge eating disorder is the most common. But it's essentially characterized by excessive restriction, often weight loss, and distorted body image. So kind of seeing yourself not as you really are. I really love pointing out really early on in any of my talks that for people with eating disorders, it's really easy to still fit that notion of, oh, a thin, young white woman. I think that's what's been kind of fed to us by the media. And unfortunately, this is not a one size fits all illness. People of all backgrounds struggle, all body sizes, all ethnicities, all ages, all genders. This is really something that affects all of us. And yet, one thing that I think is really important to note is that for people with an eating disorder, only 8% are clinically diagnosed with being underweight. So according to the BMI, the body mass index, which I got a lot of problems with, but it's what we're working with. Only 8% of people with an eating disorder are actually underweight. And I think it's just really important to say that, because even with anorexia, people can be in quote unquote normal weight bodies or have a normal range of BMI, even be overweight according to the BMI or in larger bodies. However, the restriction is still at play. There's still a lot of behavioral issues. There's a lot of damage done to the body and a lot of negative factors that happen to the body. But this goes really underdiagnosed and unnoticed because of some of that misconception that you have to be, emaciated or in a very small body to have an eating disorder. And that's just not true. So I'm like, I do this for a living, been in this field for over 15 years. I've been covered for over 20 years. And even still, I have to work against my own bias about some of these things because it's just so prevalent in the world that we live in. So a lot of fear of weight gain with anorexia and a desire to keep kind of a small childlike body, a lot of disturbance in body perception, and just extreme restriction around food. For bulimia nervosa, it definitely is mostly and often around body image, and it's characterized by a cycle of binging and then compensatory behavior. So vomiting, laxatives, overexercise, any kind of compensatory behavior. I think it's helpful to widen that range of what we might associate with bulimia. It's often about weight and shape. It can experiences eating large quantities of food in a short period of time, often having binge episodes, or even doing purging episodes after eating a quote unquote normal amount of food for somebody. But really the binge purge cycle and the purging is what's at play here with bulimia. Binge eating disorder is, again, one of the really least understood and most stigmatized, unfortunately, because our culture, for those who might be familiar with the term diet culture, this idea that thin bodies are better, we should always be losing weight or in a smaller body to be good or healthy. And there's just so much work and research that's being done for health at every size to really separate weight and health. There's, of course, complexities, and we want to care for our bodies and nourish our bodies and move our bodies and be balanced. And this obsession with tying a number on the scale to health is really damaging for so many of the clients that we see at Rock Recovery, and I think probably so many of us here on this call. And so with binge eating disorder, what often happens for folks with binge eating disorder is they've been told to lose weight, or they're struggling and they're trying to diet, they're trying to lose weight, and there's periods of restriction that then cause periods of binging. So someone might feel out of control. They might feel like, oh, I just have bad willpower. What's wrong with me? They might feel totally out of control around food. Often food insecurity can play into binge eating disorder, not knowing, what food will be prevalent, not having that safety and security around food and being nourished in a consistent manner. And then, but a binge episode is essentially defined as loss of control eating and eating a large quantity of food in a short period of time. So, and there's no compensatory measures like the bulimia. It's often distressing for someone who's experiencing binge eating disorder, and they feel out of control. And it's, again, just really misunderstood, and people can feel so much shame who are struggling with binge eating because of a lot of these misconceptions. RFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, is often not about weight or shape concerns. It's often something we see more with the neurodivergent population. There are different things sometimes based on like a traumatic experience someone had with food. If they choked one time, maybe they're afraid to eat certain foods, often a lot with texture or sensory pieces where someone might want to avoid certain foods because of these different pieces that are going on. but it really keeps people from being able to eat their nutritional needs, to meet their needs for nutrition. And it can cause some different issues there. So working with a dietitian for all of these is clearly very vital. But there can be a lot of tough to get enough of a wide variety of nourishing foods. And then someone might struggle with weight loss and improper growth charts and not meeting those growth trajectories. But there's a lot of different complexities around ARFID. And typically what we see is sometimes, of course, it can be about weight and shame, but generally it's something that is less associated with the body image portion. All right, last but not least, OSFED. So otherwise specified feeding and eating disorder. This used to be called, oh my gosh, what was it called before? I'm blanking. I'm so tired. I'm sorry. It was called something else a long time ago in the last DSM, but OSFED now, it'll come to me. But this diagnosis captures things that maybe don't meet the clinical severity. So for atypical anorexia, which is basically with anorexia, if you don't meet the body mass index criteria for being underweight, you're told you have atypical anorexia. That would fit under this. The purging disorder without the binge would often fall under this. Night eating syndrome would fall under this. And really just disordered, like chronic dieting, obsession with food, intense fasting. Like there's some behaviors that might not totally fit criteria on a chart, but they're disordered. They take up someone's daily brain space. They're inhibiting someone's daily life, their relationships, their mental well-being, and their overall sense of self. And that's something I think that we should all mention. And it seems obvious, but an eating disorder, we always say they're about the food, but they're not about the food. But they show up so much further beyond the food because, like Maddie was mentioning with her story, this sense of control, this desire to control, this fear, this really good need to feel safe, to know we're okay, to know we're enough, to know we're lovable, to want to be accepted, to not know how to navigate certain challenges in life. All these things often drive disordered eating behavior. And then, we can get kind of stuck in these cycles we never meant to get into. And so there's a lot of, I think, things that we need to really do for ourselves to help us understand, someone didn't choose to have an eating disorder. They didn't wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm going to do these things. Often it was a slow, steady slope. Oftentimes it starts with a simple choice, quote unquote, or a quote unquote harmless choice to go on a diet, to just lose a little bit of weight. I hear this story all of the time from people. Like, I didn't mean to develop anorexia. I just wanted to lose a little weight before this wedding. And suddenly, like, here I am, and I feel completely powerless against my eating disorder and don't really know what to do. And so there's certainly a spectrum of this disordered phase that might not totally meet criteria for those first 4 eating disorders. But again, eating disorders affect our daily life. It goes beyond the food. It goes into our relationships. It goes into our work. It goes into our sleep, our overall health. All of this matters. Our mental health is our physical health and our relational health and our spiritual health. So all these pieces kind of come together. So any kind of type of behavior that is hurting our well-being, I feel like is well captured here, and certainly worth seeking help for. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'm not sick enough to deserve help, or, oh, I'm not that bad, or, oh, I can handle this. And it's like anytime you start to see a warning sign, anytime there's any kind of, little red flag or orange flag that might start to go off, I'm like, it's never too early to seek help, and it's never too late to seek help. There's always tomorrow. There's always that next baby step. There's always that next right thing that we can do, and that propels us forward. So some warning signs to look out for. There are, of course, the behavioral, the emotional, the behavioral, and the physical. So generally speaking, and whenever I do this talk specifically for parents of teens, and I go through some of the lists, people are like, have you met a teenager before? Like, it's like getting withdrawn, being moody, not wanting to do what they wanted to do anymore. And it's like, of course, some of these things, right, can be developmentally normal and are part of life and part of seasons. And there's some things that can go a click too far, or really abrupt behavior that we might notice, or things that really start to take over for our loved ones. So noticing that they might start eating in secret, or start skipping family meals, or not, they show up to a social event and they're like, oh, I already ate, or noticing food going missing in the house, or maybe someone's weight and shape does change. While again, we know you can't just tell from looking at someone if they're struggling. There are some indicators of rapid weight changes, especially weight loss, that can be an indication that someone is struggling. Lots of complexities there, of course. But you can start to see people will be noticing, like, what are other people eating? They start to get concerned about food. What food's going to be there? What food are you buying for teens and younger kids? They start to ask the parents, what's in this? What are you buying? This is bad. You're hearing the bad and good food labels a little bit more. So your ears can start to kind of perk up when you hear some of those behaviors and some of those things. And certainly isolation is just a huge one to look for any mental health struggle. If people start to not feel like themselves, they're withdrawn, you're not hearing from them as often, those are such good signs that they might need support, some more support and care. I already went through a lot of these. Sorry, I didn't even need my notes. But you can start to see some other things. Some pieces I didn't mention here are some of the physical pieces, people getting injured more often, maybe working out compulsively, some menstrual irregularities for those that are in the menstruation seasons, but maybe missing periods, having their cycles change. That can be certainly something we see for our female identifying clients. And then just new practices or huge shifts around food. You know, where it's in February, I'm always like, is this why eating disorder awareness week is in February? Because we follow the January like New Year's resolution fads and crazes, and now we're like, hey guys, here we are. Like, let's find some balance in our lives again. But certainly, kind of seeing some of these extreme behaviors can be a sign as well. Dry and brittle nails, of course, is an important sign to look for. Swelling around face, growing that kind of fine hair, especially for those that maybe are underweight for their body, for their natural body shape and type. Muscle weakness, a lot of cold hands and feet, and just getting sick a lot, having not a lot of resilience. And then, of course, for bulimia and some other things as well, dental problems and noticing erosion from some of the acidic things happening in someone's mouth. All right. So that's all the education we're going to go through tonight as far as what are we working with? What do we look for? Now we'll go into what do we do, right? Like, I literally, this is my job. And when I have friends who I'm like, oh, I'm worried about them, even I like start to like feel awkward and not know what to do. And I'm like, oh, am I going to say the wrong thing? And I'm like, I literally talk about this for a living. And I promise I do know things. I am an expert in this area. But we're human, right? And it can just be so hard to know how to support. But the best thing we can do is try and show up and care. And we can't do it perfectly, and that's okay. So, what's our role? Just talking with our loved ones, letting them know that we're here for them, helping them know, like, listen, I'm worried about you. I've really seen you start to seem different recently. Like I just get the sense when I'm with you that there's something going on, and I love you and I care for you. And how can I support you? When you talk to someone you love, it's important, oftentimes you'll get met with a lot of defensiveness. So if you say like, you've lost a lot of weight, I'm really worried about you, or you're doing this, like, I'm so worried. It's all true. Like, that's not wrong, but it's hard for someone to hear who's struggling. And often if you say like, you've lost a lot of weight to someone's brain who's struggling with an eating disorder, that is actually reinforcing their behavior. It's like a reward cycle. They're like, oh, I'm doing it. It's working. People are noticing versus necessarily sometimes putting those alarm bells in place. And I know Maddie's story was beautiful. She was clearly in a very open, wonderful place and had a great relationship with her friend who shared her concern. However, sometimes you'll be met with resistance, not always openness. And because it's also a process, it might take 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 tries, right? This can be a really complex journey. But just kind of saying, trying to keep it person-centered, like, I love you. I care for you. I'm worried about you versus this isn't about your food or your running. This isn't about this thing because everyone's like, oh, I've just been, doing this recently, or I'm just training for this marathon, or I'm just going through a lot of stress at work. And all those things might be true, but it's not about the things, right? Like, it's about the person. It's about what's going on. It's about what's deeper. And that's what we're trying to drill down into. Getting someone connected to care. I mean, I can't recommend this enough. I hang out with therapists for a living. I see a few therapists personally, like just getting connected with clinicians, with dietitians, with doctors who really know eating disorders, with therapists who really know eating disorders, and getting an assessment is critical. I will say too, for eating disorders, it really is important to see a clinician who's an expert in an eating disorder. Sometimes people will go, on their Psychology Today profile or whatever and click all the boxes saying they're an expert in everything. And I'm sure there's some great people out there who know a lot of things. But with an eating disorder, you really want someone who's trained in this because it's not something that necessarily comes naturally to treat. There's a lot of research, a lot of evidence-based care, and a lot of work that goes into knowing how to help people overcome this disorder. And so it's important to find clinicians that really know what they're talking about. I will say on Rock Recovery's website, our website, we'll share it at the end, but it's just rockrecoveryed.org. We have a guide. So if you don't want to work with us directly, we have a guide of people that we work with in the area and a list of clinicians who takes insurance, who's private pay, in all the way from outpatient up through intensive outpatient, residential, and inpatient, which I'll explain a bit in a minute. But helping get people connected to care is just absolutely critical. Educating yourself on the issue, helping yourself really understand, you think you understand, but there's so much more for us all to learn. That's critical. And then continuing to check in. So I'll go into these a bit more in detail now. So knowing that this is a long process and people will forever need our support and our help, and it won't happen overnight. So when we're thinking about what we can do for our loved ones, in addition to getting them connected to care, telling them we're worried about them, supporting them, checking in, helping with accountability, calling the therapist with them, whatever the thing might be. And just a quick plug for Rock Recovery. The first step with us is a free consultation. So if you do need support and need to be plugged in, we may or may not be the right fit for you, but you can do a free 20-minute consult call with a wonderful member from our team, and we will help kind of make recommendations and assess, yep, we're a great fit. Here's what we could offer you. Or, you know what, I think you'd benefit from these different programs, because sometimes outpatient treatment is enough for a lot of people. And sometimes they might need to go to a higher level of care. They might need to go to a home or to a hospital to live full time for, 30, 60, 90 days, sometimes even 6 months. They might need to do, take a pause from work, take a pause from school, and go really focus on their recovery to get that stability before they can do their daily life and keep working on recovery and finding that stability. And for our programs at Rock, we are outpatient. So everyone that we work with is medically stable. So that's one of the big indicators for us. If someone needs a little more time and attention and robust care, we won't be the right fit. So we would refer out and up for that. But we're a great step down for people who might be coming home from a different higher level of care program. But in the day-to-day, so, what can we do with those who are struggling? What can we do just for anyone around us? Kind of being a role model. I feel like, my old ballet teacher used to always say, do as I say, not as I do, right? Because he'd be like explaining to us the combination and he'd like do the wrong thing. He's like, no, do what I say, not what I do, which is totally fair, because sometimes, we're human, we're going to make mistakes, and that's how it goes. And people are watching us, whether it's our kids, whether it's our loved ones, whether it's other people in our workplace. People are watching us. And I'm recovered from an eating disorder. I'll share a bit about my story in a bit. But when I can think back on my last 42 years, I guess I don't remember the first few years of my life, but I'm 42 years old. When I think back on the last 35 years, let's say, I could tell you, I really think if you gave me an hour, I could make you a timeline and what year, who made a comment about my body that was negative, what they said, when they said it, what it did to me. I could literally make a timeline for you of the 40 people, over the last 35 years, or however many more, gosh, I'm sure it's more than that, who made some kind of really negative comment that stuck with me, though, because the comments people make about us really sticks with us. But I think I could also make a timeline for you of, what did my loved ones say? What did my mom say? What did my best friend say? What did my girlfriend at, my dance camp say? What did other people around me say about their bodies? Because that stuck with me too. And so the way we talk about ourselves really matters. So not using shaming language about our bodies, not using shaming language about food is just one of the best things we can do. Having an all food fits approach within limitations of dietary restraints, obviously, and other factors, which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But just remembering what we say, our words have so much power, so much power. And so if you're saying it to yourself, even if you think no one's listening, or even if you think, you're caveating it, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it's all contagious and it all really matters. So some things that we talk about at Rock is we do engage in intuitive eating. Intuitiveeating.com is a great website. It's not a fit for everybody because there's certainly different indications of what people might need on their treatment plan. And it really works best in the outpatient space. You try to learn intuitive eating at higher levels of care, but a lot of it is learning to listen to your body and your hunger or fullness cues. And often for those of us that struggle with disordered eating, we've learned to zone those out. We don't know when we're hungry. We don't know when we're full. We've lost that body-mind connection. We've lost that kind of intentionality. And so sometimes it can be hard to intuitively eat until we regain some of those body-sensitive sensory feelings. But a lot of intuitive eating is just the idea, my definition of it would be, living a joyful life with food and movement and exercise, eating when we're hungry, stopping when we're full, enjoying food for more than just nourishment. Definitely yes for nourishment and for life and for birthday cakes and donuts with my daughter on Saturday mornings and whatever the thing might be. But just having a balanced approach to food. So intuitive eating, some of these principles that might be helpful to keep in mind for yourself and your loved ones is honoring your hunger by eating. Like when you're hungry, don't just do a thing to distract yourself or not be hungry. Eat, figure out what works for you and your body and eat. Um, Respect your fullness by stopping when you're full. It's okay to overeat a little bit because something's just so delicious, or there's that like really warm, great cookie out of the oven, and you're like, I'm gonna have two because they're warm, and they're only warm ones. The microwave just isn't the same. So like, there's certainly times that we might work past that a little bit, but generally speaking, getting in tune with what makes our body feel good. So knowing when we're at the point that our bodies are happy and they're satisfied and we've had enough to fuel us and to care for us and to enjoy, and then kind of being at peace with that. Discovering the satisfaction factor, eating what you like, figuring out what you like, not eating what you don't like. Making peace with food and your body. This is our little slogan for Rock. All bodies rock, which I really love. And remembering that, all foods fit, so I'm going to kind of go into these together. But the idea of all bodies do rock. All bodies are good body. You have a body, good. It's good. Like your body is good. And of course, there's chronic pain and there's illness and there's all kinds of challenges that we have in our bodies, allergies, autoimmune. Like there's many challenges we experience in our physical bodies. And they are good. They are our home. They're how we experience life. They're how we, hug our friends. They're how we show up in our world. We need our bodies and we need to care for our bodies. And so remembering to honor our bodies is such an important part. And the world has told us only one size body, only one type of body is good. And that is such a lie. And I get so mad about it because, everyone's trying to get our money and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, the weight loss and diet industry. And as we know, diets don't work, right? The rebound rates are wild and often leave us gaining more weight than when we started our diets. But just coming to peace with our body and with food and learning that all bodies rock and we need to care for our bodies and all foods fit. Again, modifications for, of course, allergies and cultural factors here, but just not letting ourselves say like, nope, those foods are totally off limit. I'm not going to eat any of those things. Because again, when we think about binge episodes, they often happen because we restricted, because we said, this is bad. I'm not doing it. I won't eat it. Then we eat one of the things we thought was bad, and then we eat the whole box, the whole whatever, because we've already quote unquote ruined it. And if we just moderate our relationship to food, remove those rules of good and bad, it removes a lot of the power and those compensatory behaviors that happen around food. Avoid generally using food primarily to cope with feelings. Lots of caveats there. You think like the rom-coms where someone breaks up and they go for the pint of ice cream in the fridge, like that is a rite of passage. And dare I ever take that from somebody? That is a great thing to do. However, noticing, how are we handling our feelings? Are we coping with them by always going for a run or by always restricting this thing or always eating this thing? Or are we coping by like breathing, taking a minute, processing, sitting with it, talking to a friend, journaling, whatever that self-care or thing might be, like making sure we're not just stuffing our feelings or avoiding our feelings, but feeling our feelings. And I know for me, when I went through my recovery, so I struggled from 13 to 23, give or take. But I really think my disordered relationship with food started when I was 8. We moved from Pennsylvania to Texas against my will. I'm still mad about it. My parents sat me and my sister down saying we had to have a family meeting. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're finally going to Disney World or getting a puppy. Never been to Disney World still, never had a puppy. But I did move to Texas. And just that move at such a young age really threw me, took away my sense of control, took away my sense of safety, honestly. We were an hour from my grandparents. I loved my grandparents. They were the best. And I just was like, wait, what? This is my house. These are my friends. This is my school. This is my life. And it was so hard for me to adjust. And my sister is way more resilient than me. She was much more of a troublemaker later on in life. So I went there. But like with that move, she was way more resilient than me. And I think no one really knew what to do with me and how to support me when I was struggling so much. And food comforted me, So I learned that habit early on that I have a hard feeling, turn to food. I never really learned to cope with my feelings. I never really learned to name it or feel it. I just wanted to avoid it. I just wanted the bad feeling to be over. But like, there's no good or bad feelings. Just like I say, there's no good or bad food. But there's feelings that show us, there's pain, there's sadness, there's things we need to feel and work through. And if we're coping by always avoiding, we're not really like getting into that fullness of life and wellness. So, and then later, I became a ballerina early on. So then I went from my view of food as like my best friend and my confidant and my comfort to like, oh no, food is scary because it changes my body and I have to look a certain way to be acceptable and loved and to get the good parts and to get the praise, which was a whole journey for me throughout high school and then into college, kind of going and moving away again and having that push pull, not knowing who I was, wanting the attention when I lost the weight, getting the praise, when I gained the weight, getting the crickets or the critiques. And just that behavior for so long was just such a devastating cycle for me. And what eventually got me better was stumbling upon a support group, which I'll talk about more at the end. That I didn't even realize I had an eating disorder at the time, but I stumbled into a church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there's a 6-week group for eating disorders, and somehow I stumbled into it, and that is what got me better. And then I did outpatient therapy and outpatient treatment, and kind of here I am now. So sorry for the quick story time, but I thought it might help ground some of what we're talking about today. And I'll talk a bit more towards the end of resources and ways to reach out for support. But just thinking through all these pieces of intuitive eating, I can just think through in my own journey what made a big difference and how eventually learning like how to energize myself, how to rest when I'm tired, how to remove the food police, the idea of good and bad food was the biggest thing for me. Because if, this food was good and I didn't choose to eat it and I ate the bad food, then I'm bad, or then I felt shame. And then I had this whole relationship with my body. And I never was listening to like, but do I want the salad or do I want the other thing? Like, and maybe I really do want the hamburger or the other thing, whatever the thing people might tell you is bad, but like it's because I need more iron or whatever's going on. And then maybe I want the salad the next day versus, oh, this is always bad, this is always good. Like our bodies can learn to regulate that for us. And that's part of the beauty of intuitive eating and recovery as well. All right. So this is kind of the good food. Look, I love my little chart here. Good food and also good food, right? Like you might call apple good. I'm like, I'm here to tell you, I will call a cupcake good. I will declare it this Eating Disorder Awareness Week 2026, write it down. But, cake is good and it's wonderful. We have so many clients at Rock Recovery who have these beautiful stories. They're like, oh my gosh, I ate my kid's birthday cake for the first time ever. And they weren't like, Mommy, why aren't you eating this? It's so delicious, and like that just makes me want to cry just thinking about it. Like it's life, right? These things are just what happens with our lives and it's beautiful and good. And our bodies and our brains need glucose and sugar to survive, and sugar is not the enemy. And of course, we want this balance and moderation in other foods as well. But removing some of the shame and stigma is such a part of finding freedom around food. And again, everyone's journey is different and everyone's privileges are different and everyone's different indications for what they're able to do. However, just some of this removing the good and bad is one of the best things we can do as a role model for ourselves and for those who are struggling. All right, so as we're talking to our loved ones, what do we do? Be present, actually listen. Isn't listening so hard? Oh my gosh. It's like, because we care, we want to talk, we want to help fix, we want to, give all of our wonderful advice. And I'm sure you have wonderful, brilliant advice. However, listening is one of the best things we can do for our loved ones. And just giving them space, helping them feel heard, knowing they're not alone. That is such a beautiful thing. And just also being wise. I've learned this in my couples therapy. It's like when I feel the thing I desperately want to talk about with my partner, perhaps now is not the time. Perhaps I need to wait when I'm feeling a little more calm and I'm not maybe panicked and I can bring it up later, right? So keeping those things in mind of like, what's the right timing? How are we doing? Checking in with ourselves, regulating our own emotions, because this might be scary and bring up a lot for us. Just trying to regulate that. You're allowed to be human, but be wise before we have these conversations can be set up. And then again, this is the getting connected to care piece, which I've talked about at the beginning a bit, but doing your research is critical. Building a treatment team is critical. It takes experts. I say for my own recovery, what eventually really got me well are really like 3 things, finding my true identity. And for me, my faith was a huge part of that, developing the faith, finding that like freedom and sense of like worthiness and belonging and acceptance and love was huge for me. The second one was just the experts. Love the people with the fancy letters behind their names, like listen to those people. So finding that treatment team, finding those experts, and then my loved ones, my people, my family, my community. My parents were so supportive. My sister struggled with anorexia when we were in high school, and hers was a little easier to spot, so mine went under the radar. And so it was really hard for them to recognize they had 2 daughters with eating disorders, and and it was not their fault. There were lots of factors happening in our lives, and certainly lots of things that kind of blew into it and built into it. But they were so supportive. They certainly, didn't do it perfectly, but they did their best. And to this day, they're 2 of my biggest cheerleaders, and they're always front and center at all of our recovery events. And I'm so grateful for them. And my friends, I remember having so many conversations with friends who were like, I don't know what to say, but I love you. And I'm like, great, you did it. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Like, I just want to know I'm not alone and you love me and you're here for me and that's okay. And you don't need to know exactly what to say or what not to say. So those are kind of the three pieces that I'd say really brought me into my journey, and that can be really helpful for our loved ones as well. And again, on the education piece. So you're here tonight, kudos, you're doing it. Reading articles, blogs. We have a lot of great content on Rock Recovery's website, but just making sure you're educating yourself on the issue is such a wonderful thing to do. And finding support for you. What's the corny thing about your oxygen mask right in the airplane? It's like, put yours on first before you help somebody else. And it really is true. We have to care for ourselves before we care for others, because one, burnout is real and our bodies eventually have a breaking point. And two, we will be better at caring for others if we're caring for ourselves too. It won't be out of this frantic place. Like if we're actually coming at more of our wise place and doing more of that work for ourselves and caring for ourselves, we can make sure that we're not having our own things kind of spill over onto others. And that just makes such a huge difference. So giving yourself permission to rest, to get a break, get some respite, staying engaged in like daily rituals, spiritual practices, meditation, walking, getting outside, whatever that might be, seeing your friends, staying in community, telling people. And I know it's hard when it's someone else's story, like when you're struggling, when your partner's struggling, or when your child's struggling, because it's not your story, but it is. But you can still get support without having to share the details of the other person's story in those kind of tender moments. So there's, of course, some caveats there and some healthy boundaries to put in place. And that's why professional help is so helpful to seek from a clinician too. Checking in. So if you're a family member, staying connected as a family, still doing things together, family dinners, yes, but also, morning walks or like cartoons or whatever TV, I mean, streaming things these days, or game night or whatever that thing might be, kind of keeping that connection and having fun. Isn't it hard to remember to have fun? I'm like, I got stuff to do. Who has time for fun? But it's just, not only is it good for us and rest helps us, live our lives more fully. Like we need it. And it's okay to be human and have limitations. Um, if your loved one's under 18, you do have a little bit more authority and say in their treatment program. And so many of you, I'm sure, who are here, if you have a young one under 18, a loved one under 18, I should say, are familiar with family-based treatment, so FBT, which for a lot of people is a great method of treatment. It's where the parent is really in the driver's seat. You're eating all your meals with your kid. You are really setting the meal plan. You are the one, like you are the cheerleader. You are the driver. And I know it's exhausting. But it, for a lot of people, really, really works and has incredible outcomes. Sometimes we need different approaches for different types and personalities and different family structures. But knowing that, you do have certain say for those 18 and under. I know it's tougher with our loved ones, even if it's a child who's above 18, because we don't have as much control or say on their treatment plan and treatment program and what they're doing. And that's where we really use our wisdom on sharing our concern, trying to get help, offering our support and resources, setting those healthy boundaries for ourselves and for them, and kind of respecting that as hard as that can be. That's sort of the other piece for the adults. But just remember to keep checking in with yourself and with your loved ones as well. So kind of to wrap up here soon, if your child is an adolescent, you're a core part of the treatment process. Don't forget that. Like you're in it. And so you are really core. And they might scream, oh gosh, the stories I've heard from the parents I work with. And it's not your child saying these things to you, right? It's their eating disorder. They're scared. They feel out of control. It is terrifying. It is so hard to do the hard work of recovery. And so they might call you names. They might throw food at you. Some things will be said. But remembering it's part of the process. This is a hard illness to overcome. It is not impossible. It is possible. But that is just part of that journey. And being an advocate for your child. So knowing if something's not sitting right with you, listening to some of that intuition and getting some insight from the experts. Get support for yourself. Remember, recovery is not linear. Oh my gosh. I remember sitting in my therapist's office and being like, great. I had a little binder. I'm like, what is the plan? Like, what is like the 3-month plan, 6-month plan, whatever. And it's like, well, often it takes years. I'm like, let's scratch that advice. But like, every day is one step closer to recovery, one step closer to that healing, one step closer to being in a full, integrated, joyful life. And there's still, of course, joy and goodness in the midst of the struggle as well. But we are working towards a goal of more of that, of finding more of that in our daily lives. And remember, it's not linear. There'll be setbacks. Don't panic. It is just part of the process. And I remember for me, so many pieces of my recovery felt so confusing because I wanted the roadmap and there wasn't one. And I was real bummed about it. I wanted to figure out like exactly where I went wrong. And I couldn't figure out the exact, like I've been journaling since I was 8. They get a little better as I get older. They weren't so exciting when I was 8. But I just remember the first night I realized I had an eating disorder, going home and reading all my journals, like sitting on my bed cross-legged with like 20 something journals around me, being like, I'm going to read these journals. I'm going to figure out where I went wrong. And then I'm going to like get it all right. And, introspection is good. Reflection's great. And moving forward is good too. And remembering that the past is the past and it's important to process it. It's important to move through it. And as we move forward, there'll be setbacks. It won't be perfect. We can't figure it all out perfectly, but one day at a time, one baby step at a time. And as an adult, remembering that, if you're a parent and if it's a friend or a peer or a loved one, they are the driver of their recovery. Even if you know better in so many ways, like they are the driver, it is up to them. You can support them. You can respect the boundaries they set. You can set your own boundaries with somebody if you need to. Same thing, recovery takes time. It's not linear. And the best thing you can do is offer your love and support and put your own boundaries in place as you need to care for yourself as well. All right, so quick story. I know this is heavy and it's hard. And me telling you that I'm recovered is great, but it's so hard when you're in it. And again, I remember thinking there's no way I'll ever be recovered. The day I realized I stopped counting calories, I was like, wait, I don't know how many calories I ate today. And I was like, wait, I don't know how many calories I ate yesterday. And I would have told you there's no way I would ever not know exactly how many calories I ate because I was so good at counting my calories. Like, the only redeeming thing about counting my calories for so many years is I'm really good at math in my head. Don't need that calculator. It's fine. But I was just like, whoa, I never thought this thing would be possible. And my therapist gave me all these little tools, like when you want to count a calorie, be that annoying younger brother you never had, and think of like a number like 12,468 and 392, like, and like get your brain out of the rut. And that tip, like slowly over time with my therapy and my skills and all the things I was doing and all the exposures, it got me there. And I would have literally bet you any amount of money that, like, you idiot, I will count calories forever. And I would have lost a lot of money because I don't count calories anymore. And it's so much better for my relationship to food in my body. So just kind of thinking it through, things like this, you feel like things won't shift, but they can, and they do. And it's not some big sweeping gesture. It's often those small steps put together. All right. So my daughter is well today. She's in college in a full-time, sorry, I can't see myself. I need to look at this thing. A full-time art student living on her own. We both love to paint, and art has been a gift to the both of us towards new beginnings. Healing in our life does not mean it's perfect, and it never will. Never will be. But the freedom is real, and there's a life for us to live. So Ginger was wonderful. She actually came to a support group that I led, and her daughter came through our teen Bridge to Life therapy program that we run. We run in person and run one virtually from Virginia and Maryland. And I mean, they had tried, I think, 3 programs. They had struggled for years, and they just were out of hope when they came to us. And it was just like such a grace and such a beautiful thing that we got to be the thing that helped turn the tide for them and got their daughter, in school, stable, still working hard, still doing some pieces in her own recovery and her own journey through the transitions. But they never thought they would get there. And it's just such a gift to have gotten to be on that journey with them and to know there's redemption for the past and there's real hope for the future as well. So here's some resources that we have. The only official parent group we have our clinical programs are completely secular and unfaith related, but we do have a faith-based support group that is the first Tuesday of the month that is run by a wonderful volunteer who's a parent. So that is one of our specific parent resources that we offer at Rock Recovery. Everything else we do, again, we're a very inclusive organization, very open to working and love working with everybody. But that is something unique that we offer. And there are lots of wonderful parents groups that our friends at the Alliance for Eating Disorders runs. There's some great private practices locally. Clarity Counseling, excuse me, runs a great family support group. Clarity Counseling is the name of that. They're in Gainesville, but they have a virtual Zoom group. I believe Prosperity Counseling has some great family groups. So there's lots of other wonderful family and loved ones groups that are often virtual. These are two that I like to call out for us. And there is a parent toolkit, of course, on the NIDA site. And then my email is just Christie@rockrecoveryed.org. Info is our general email. So you're welcome to send a note to info or to me directly if you have questions or want to connect further. Go to our website. I mentioned the first step's the consultation process. We've got a lot of different events going on. We just had Eating Disorder Awareness Week, so we've got a lot of events this week. We've got our big annual gala on March 21st in Arlington and Roslyn, and Mental Health Month for May. We'll be working, I think, with NAMI again, so check us out again. So we'll be doing a lot more things in the future, but we'd love to have you come to a future event for us as well, or see if we can support you. So I will stop my screen. I am only a minute over my time.
I'm impressed.
Girl, listen, for you. I'll try.
And
try
you kept your voice.
And for my voice, my poor voice.
Before we move into questions, and I'm going to invite Maddie back in, I want to say we're going to put a survey into the chat, and then we're going to follow it up with it in email. But if you could spend a few minutes filling it out, thank you, Esther. If you could spend a few minutes filling that out, we'd really appreciate it. Everything we do is at no charge, and the way that we do that is by keeping our funders happy. And data is where it comes from. First of all, Christy, thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your lived experience. We know there's nothing like that lived experience. Christy and I share a lot of similarities in terms of our dancing background and how our disordered eating came about. I want to ask for both of you, where we live in this Ozempic world right now. What are you feeling as someone who has recovered from their eating disorder? What do you see in your work? Maddie, what do you see with your friends? Because I mean, I have a teenager and a college age student and a graduate age student, and I'm older. I am the oldest. Seeing kind of a new pressure that isn't coming from their age group, which is different because through social media we see so much, but this is from my age and they're feeling it. So I'm curious to hear from y'all.
Yeah, definitely. I would say personally, my thoughts on that, it really breaks my heart. I want to give everyone a hug, honestly. And I think that it's so important what Christy was talking about, being that role model, setting those healthy relationships with food, as a role model to the younger generation. And I think working together, in order to kind of combat that Ozempic kind of, I don't want to say trend, but maybe that's the right word, but what's going on right now. And I think it's very important to raise awareness, not even just during Eating Disorder Awareness Month, but I think year round for eating disorder awareness, as well as mental health awareness.
Such a great point, Maddie, and great question. And this is something that just holds so much nuance. So I feel like it's such an important question. In a way, I'm always bracing myself for this question because, gosh, there's nuance. I mean, so I want to introduce from a couple different perspectives, and I do feel like we talk a bit about like body autonomy, and people need to do what's best for themselves, make decisions with their providers and their doctors. And from what we've seen in the eating disorder field, right? Like, what's the phrase? When you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Like, I see a lot of the risks for people with disordered eating backgrounds and eating disorders. So I can speak to that specifically. But before I speak to that specifically, because I think that's a very nuanced piece, um, there's just a lot of complexities. We don't exactly know what the long-term effects will be for some people. I think there can be, you can hear mixed experiences. People have their own unique journeys that they're on. But one thing that certainly concerns me that we're seeing societally is that for a minute, we had the body positivity, like people in larger bodies, people in small, like people just kind of saying, be in your skin, be comfortable. Because you can be in a larger body and have great labs, have great health, have all these things. But we've been kind of told, no, you can't. Like there's a lot of dissonance, I think, around some of these messages. And of course, there are times when our labs need some support and there's things we need to do for our health to change those things. So there's, of course, medical things, and I'm not a medical doctor. So there's certainly nuance there. And what I see, and I actually did an interview with Arlington Magazine about this, which was in, I think, the January issue. So if you want to look it up, you can see more of it. But it's also hard when you're quoted, because I'm like, oh, I think so many more things, because there's so much nuance, there's so much caveat. I've heard stories of people who are like, it changed my whole life for the better. And like, I think that story is valid. And I've heard a lot of stories of people who are like, it ruined my whole life. And now I can't pick up my kid, and like my health is worse than ever. So there's just such nuance. But for people with eating disorders, what scares me the most, and I think what gives me the most pause, is that this idea of food noise. Um, when you have disordered eating and you remove the food noise, that's really dangerous. And so you might say, this is helping me with my eating disorder because now I'm not thinking about food anymore, but it's really masking something. It's not dealing with the underlying root. It's not getting to the core. It's not dealing with what's actually going on, and it's masking something. And that might then in turn result in greater disordered behaviors as a result. So if you're not going to remember to eat, if you can't force yourself to kind of get the nutrition and nourishment you need, that's a real problem. And then just the pressure we're seeing, again, we moved from this body positive, beautiful bodies, good bodies, big bodies, to now weight loss, like, not to pick on Serena Williams, but she's one of the big spokespeople, right, for one of the medications. Lots of these people who used to kind of see as different role models are suddenly now on the weight loss bandwagon. There's a lot of other celebrities whose names I could mention who, used to be body positive, now have lost a lot of weight, and it's changing the narrative. So there's a lot more of that pressure again on the thin ideal, on weight loss. And we've moved from this body positivity to like the thin is in. And it's just a dangerous place to be, because our bodies are all different and all made uniquely. And a lot of them aren't small, and that's okay. And there's a lot of different things rooted in, the thin ideal and diet culture. A lot of it's rooted in racism. There's a great book called Fearing the Black Body. There's a lot of different things to talk about, I think, about different things with body. And I can talk forever. I'm sorry, I can shut up in a minute. But it's just there's such nuance, and I have such a concern because we don't know the long-term effects, and what it's doing can be fueling eating disorders for a lot of people that we specifically see at Rock Recovery.
And I think, going to what you were saying about this moment in time, we're both former ballerinas. Misty Copeland came up. And for me, I'm 48. Yes, it said I'm the oldest.
The wise, that's true.
Now, there you go. I mean, for me, I'm 5'9". I'm a tall girl. It was 109 pounds. I could not get over that, or I wasn't going to be dancing. And when then we get this beautiful athletic ballerina that our girls can look up to, our children can start looking up to, it was amazing. But then we see a female rugby player, getting destroyed in social media because she's of her body type. It's just such an interesting circle that we continue to go down. There's a question about the name of the book that you mentioned.
Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings.
Thank you.
That's a good one.
What do we see in terms of young people? Are we seeing, as we're trying to break the stigma, we're working with, kind of across the board, we're trying to, with young people, breaking stigma about mental illness, about talking about your feelings, about talking about where you're at. What do you see trend-wise, I guess, in terms of young people? And Maddie, this can be, what you're seeing You're way young for us. Um, what are you seeing with your friends in terms of where we are right now and what we can, what we still need to do work on?
Yeah, I definitely think coming from a youth, young adult perspective, I think that my generation is becoming more comfortable talking about mental health. And eating disorders, mental illness, mental health. We're becoming more comfortable with sharing it, I think. And I think it starts with just one person. I think having that connection with friends, when you're a safe person, when you open up and somebody else feels comfortable sharing as well. And you kind of form that community, groups like Rock Recovery, like NAMI, they bring people together to form that sense of community. I will say, I think social media is the downfall of our society sometimes, because there's that comparison that comes with that and these perfect lives depicted. However, I also think it can be such a powerful tool because we're able to virtually connect, do things like Zoom, share our stories through Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. So they can be such powerful tools. And I really am proud of my generation for kind of taking that step and getting this conversation started, because that's how eventually we can end the stigma.
Well said. Christy?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think social media is affecting us. And one of the dangers is it's the comparison and it's the feeling bad about yourself is also getting information from people who aren't actually experts. That's what scares me the most for young people is that this person on TikTok said it and therefore it's like gospel truth. And that is just scary and dangerous because people often don't have the credentials that should be giving advice, right? Um, so I see that. We certainly see the increase. I mean, if I can think of, hang on, like I just read a grant this morning that we just submitted. I'm like, let me think of my statistics. We had, a 400% increase in 2020 kind of overnight for our programs. And we've started two unique teen programs since because from all of the research and work we're seeing is kids' mental health, teens' mental health is just really the stress, the pressure, the world, like our youth are feeling it and it's not getting better, unfortunately, right? Like it's getting harder. The one thing I will say though that I'm sure you've seen too at NAMI is that but also like our teens are so cool. Like when I'm in the office and our teens come in for our group, of course I don't listen because like HIPAA, but like I just like it warms my heart to like hear them walk down the hallway or hear them giggle, like to hear like the muffled sounds of them down the hallway. I'm like, they are supporting each other. They are in it, like they are advocating for each other. And it is so beautiful to see. And I think a lot of the teens are a little more open about sharing what they're struggling with. Like there's a little bit more conversation and openness,
Yeah.
I think, that I've seen. Whereas before it's hush hush, no one knows what I'm leaving school at 3 p.m. for. But now like people know I'm going to therapy,
Yep.
and I think that's been positive. There's a little bit more understanding and conversation. But we're seeing the stress that our young people are under and how it's affecting them. And then again, these pressures. That's an ideal coming back. I'm just so bummed. I'm just so
I
bummed.
know.
I don't think we know the half of it yet.
Yeah. And like I said before, I think it's just so interesting that so much of that is coming from my age, from, people older than me even. That's where it's coming from. It's not, and I know that I'm generalizing here a lot, but it's not our teenagers that are creating this back to thin ideal. It's me. It's my peers. Um, and we should know better. Good question. How would you help a friend who is unhealthily losing weight, but oh, this is it. Everyone around them is applauding them because they were overweight.
I'll take this one first.
Yeah,
I can't sit on
thank
my
you.
hands enough to, yeah, sorry. Oh gosh, it's just so complicated. And I hear this from people all the time where like they're applauded for losing weight and they're like, I had cancer and I was getting complimented for my weight loss. Like we should never comment on someone's body. I can't believe I didn't say this in my presentation. Like commenting on someone's body, we never know what they're going through. And you might be reinforcing negative behaviors like unhealthy weight loss mechanisms. And so if you're reinforcing it, you're applauding something that's unhealthy for somebody. I know I got my most compliments when I was at my least healthy, like right, but everyone thought I looked so great,
Absolutely.
right? So just remembering that, gosh, unfortunately, you can't. change other people. What a bummer, right? But I think what I'm in, and of course people know what I do for a living, so my friends are kind of smart enough to at least like filter themselves around me probably. But when you're in a room and someone says something, if you can kind of shift the conversation and just be like, like you've always looked great, or like I just care that you're taking care of yourself, or like how are you feeling, like your weight, whatever, like, but how are you feeling, like are you sleeping better, like are you like what's happening, like kind of shifting it to like the deeper real things a little bit, versus just, oh my gosh, your body's shrinking, that must be so great, which like again we just don't know that's so great, and if it isn't healthy behaviors, but that's just going to happen, like this is just the world we live in, and it's really hard to swim upstream in it.
We
um
talk about this on social media. It's the skinny privilege.
mhm,
If people are saying how great you look and it must be so easy for you and all of those things, it reinforces the unhealthy. And
mhm,
so, you know, Maddie shared that this person in her life who she wasn't even close to saw it and was able to say, I'm worried. Like, I'm here, I'm worried. That's something you can do. And like Christy said, it might take 5, 10, 30, 180 times, but you're still there. Maddie, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that was beautifully said by both of you. I couldn't have said it better myself.
That was a great question. And I read that and I'm like, yeah, because we do see so much. And going, what Maddie said about social media, it's it's hard. It's hard as a parent. I have 3 girls. It's hard as a parent to be that person that says, yeah, you don't know their whole life. But mom, yeah, I know. Um, and I think that's something that we can do as leaders in organizations, as ambassadors, get who have a big stage, is to say, you don't know what everybody's going through. You don't know what their real life is. You know, not everybody's life is what it is on social media. So, how did you, Maddie, it's all you. How do you handle dating or food situations while you were stuck struggling or recovering? What helped you feel less anxious in social? This is a great question. What helped you feel less anxious in social situations involving food? How did you set boundaries when you needed to without opening up about your eating disorder? Whew.
This is a great question. Let me compose my thoughts. So I'll take it piece by piece. How did I handle dating or food situations while I was struggling or recovering? I will say for me personally, when I was struggling, I didn't. I was not the kind, nice person personally that I am now. I was irritable all the time, and I just kind of said no to a lot of things. And once I started navigating my recovery, I kind of learned those boundaries that we're talking about later in the question. I learned what I was comfortable with, and I never pushed myself to do something that I wasn't comfortable with. I learned my own personal boundaries. What kind of helped me in social situations involving food is I was just around people that I was comfortable with. I had those safe people that made me feel comfortable and included, and they weren't commenting on what I was eating, and
Mhm.
that made me feel safe. So I think that it's definitely different for everybody, and you kind of figure out what works for you and your specific path and in your life. Those are just a few things that helped me was setting those boundaries, finding those safe people, maybe saying no to things that I didn't feel comfortable doing, but also realizing, I'm young and I deserve to go on that date or I deserve to go get dinner with my friends. And that's a good thing. That's an exciting thing. So I think it's finding that balance and doing what you're comfortable with. Did you have anything to add, Christy?
I do, because I was hip and cool. I was 23 when I started treatment. I was dating. I was out there, Rebecca. Don't count me out. Uh, I'm
I
teasing.
just forget how old I am. And,
I'm
I
teasing.
don't remember back then.
Oh, I know. Well, I can try. And I can speak mostly because I think to some degree I tried, I did some coping skills with my therapist and I'd make a plan. Like I'd figure out like to some degree where we were going, what I was going to do. Tried to avoid some dinner date situations, maybe like, doing a coffee or doing something else small to start to like gain confidence. That was helpful. But then using it as a bit of an exposure, but like preparing for it with my therapist. With my friends, honestly, though, that was the hardest piece. So when I started treatment like about a year after I graduated college, and I was in a sorority, which I loved. But a lot of my friends had disordered eating and didn't know they had it either. Like, because I was so around it that I didn't. Once I realized, oh, this isn't how I want to live, I realized, oh, but like so many people that I love around me say this about their foods, say this about their bodies, say they shouldn't eat this, say, oh, they're so this. Like, and I just knew I couldn't be around it in the same way. So first season, I never told anyone. One thing I did was I told people like, listen, if they started to make a conversation um, topic about food or bodies, since I was open about my recovery, I was like, hey, I love you guys. Like this is I just can't be around this conversation right now. Can we just shift it? And people would just shift it. I know that I'm like more bold than many people. So I'm sure that not everyone would be comfortable with that, but for me, that worked. And then for a while, honestly, I scaled back some relationships. Like and for some people, like I didn't go out to dinner with them for like 6 months. I was like, until I felt stronger footing in my recovery, I met them for walks or I met them for coffee or I went for whatever. But I was just like, I don't need to sit down and watch them eat half a salad. Like I need to like be around. So I thought about my friends that like I loved watching them eat. Like, cause there were a few people that I was like, they just seemed comfortable around food. And so I like made sure to like schedule lunch dates with those people and like tried to be around people that would maybe help like positively influence me in that area. And that really helped.
This is another, how do you deal with the, I don't know, shame, but I'm going to add fear of relapsing and struggling with your disordered eating?
I'll let Christy take this one first, and then I'll hop in afterwards.
Gosh, it's such a good question. And it is hard because it's just part of the process, right? Like, so, and everyone's journey again is unique and different. So, like, what relapse looks like will be different. The journey of time it takes will be different. And that's just really hard. Um, and to some degree, remembering like nothing's wrong with you, like, it's not your fault. This is like our brains are trying to help us and we're working in like a maladaptive coping skill, we're working in a disordered world, and so like we are just doing the best we can and having some compassion, which I know is really hard to do because a lot of us with disordered eating might be a little bit perfectionistic, dare I say, right? Like there's a lot of that. I know, shocking. High achieving, right? There's and again we all have our own nuances, but like there it's hard to not be perfect. I'm really bummed out by it. But it is just the journey and it is just the process. So remembering that and giving yourself grace and then not letting yourself like the momentum of it, like knowing, okay, when I slip up, instead of then spiraling into isolation or like doing these behaviors, I'm going to commit to calling this person. I'm going to commit to like making an extra appointment with my therapist. I'm going to commit to like doing this thing. Um, so that I knew what I was going to do when like the panicked hard thing happened and I wasn't in the moment panicking and struggling and like, oh no, what do I do? So planning ahead, like coping ahead, it's one of the DBT skills, right? Coping ahead. Super helpful. And then I know I could talk to you forever about this. Like you're just not alone too. Just remember you're not alone and it's okay. And like the small steps, just the small steps.
Definitely agree. I was thinking in my head right before you said it. I was like, I just want to tell everyone you're not alone. And I feel like sometimes it can really feel like you are. And I think really leaning on those resources, those coping skills, I think it's so important. And just knowing that it's okay to not be okay all of the time and you're never alone, and leaning on those resources and those support systems is just, it was so helpful for me
We
personally.
really have gotten Maddie into all of the NAMI-isms. It's okay to not be okay, and I love it. Good. Um,
Can I say one last thing that sorry
yeah,
came to mind?
please.
My therapist said this to me and she was just like the wise. I would like sit at her feet and learn from her forever. I was like, can I read your journal? Tell me everything. She wouldn't let me, so weird. Boundaries. But she was like, you didn't develop your eating disorder overnight, and you're not going to recover from it overnight either. Like you build up the patterns over time, like you did all these things. And so, like, the unraveling of it also takes time. And just remembering that.
I'm going to ask one last question. Um, do you see people, and I guess Christy, this was for you, moving from one disorder to another? Is that something that
Symptom
happens often?
substitution is the fancy, the fun thing to
Ooh.
say. Yeah, because duh, like the easy button of life, right? I think Glennon Doyle talks about that a little bit of like hitting the easy button, right? Like, and I know she struggled with substance, alcohol, and then bulimia and anorexia. Um, so often you see kind of shifting from one to the other. And again, often it's a coping thing, right? So like we just want to feel better, and wow, life is hard. And so it's really common to go from like, okay, well, instead of doing this now, maybe I'm even like shopping more, or like, yeah, drinking more, or like, I don't know, like making to-do lists more. Like I got really obsessed with looking at my airline status for a while. I'm like, oh man, this is kind of like my like, because it's like I'm like, I just want to hit platinum. I want to hit. That was what I didn't. It was very sad. I was so close. So whatever the thing might be that we're clinging to feel in control, but you definitely see a lot of that switching. And then within disordered eating behaviors, again, the restriction often can fuel the binging, and so you see a lot of crossover there. And then definitely people will sometimes move through even like anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating in different iterations, just based on their own struggle and their own kind of journey to move through it. So we definitely do see that. It's not uncommon.
Okay, last words. If you were you have the chance to change the world in terms of eating disorders right now, what would you say? What would be that change that you would make if you could change it and everybody would be changed? Woo!
Don't believe the world or the media, they're lying to you. But again, like just the idea of, I really like the idea of it's never too late to get help, but I love the idea of it's never too early. So like any amount of time we're struggling, like don't wait to reach out. Don't wait for it to get worse or to be like, just don't wait. Just don't wait if you can, if you're here and whatever that looks like. Um, and just remember, like your body is not the problem. Sorry, yeah, one thing. Yeah, right, Rebecca. Like I'll say one
I, I see. I left like 5 minutes because
thing.
I knew.
I know. Thank you. I love you. Um, your body is not the problem, right? Like your body is not the problem. It's not a problem. Like there's so much disorder in the world. There's so much weight bias. There's so much pressure. There's just so much. And just remember, like your body's good. And again, lots of ways we can better care for ourselves. We want to be stewarding them well, but like your body's not.
Maddie.
Absolutely. I would also say, um, your body and your mind deserve kindness. You deserve kindness and grace and a beautiful, beautiful life. And you don't have to go through things alone. Personally, leaning on those supports was so helpful for me. And just kind of learning that, hey, I do deserve to be healthy, and my mind and my body are perfect the way that they are. And I am perfect the way that I am, and everyone is perfect the way that they are. So we don't need to fit into these unrealistic standards. Because you are enough as you are.
See, this is why I love these two ladies. Um, I am so grateful to both of you for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, and being willing to share because that's, like I said, it's not easy, but it's how we change the world. We will be, to everyone on this list, we will be sending an email. We're going to be putting this up on our YouTube channel. I invite you all to our next NAMI talk, and thank you, Esther, our survey, which will also follow up. We'll put contact information, as well as some of the resources that Christy was mentioning in our follow-up email. On March 30th will be our next NAMI talk on World Bipolar Day. So we are going to be, we have a wonderful licensed psychologist who's going to be talking about bipolar and different treatments, but also what it looks like in different people in different ages, what the timeline looks like, as well as one of our peer volunteers who lives with bipolar telling his story. So that will be March 30th. We'll put some information to register in the follow-up email. So thank you all. Christy, Maddie, thank you for just giving your time and to helping people. I mean, you do it all in your everyday, but you're doing it at night too. And the more we get to talk, the better our communities will be. So thank you
Thank
all
you.
and
Great to be with you
have a
all.
great night.
You.
Thank you.